Well, here's a really interesting thing, and that is, and we'll give you some ideas to create subject lines in a second. But first, here's a really interesting thing about subject lines. Subject lines are not as important as they're made out to be. They're interesting, and from a sort of purely geeky email marketing point of view, we quite like clever subject lines just because it's fun, right? It's like it's the train spotting of email marketing. Like, it's just fun to like see what you can come up with and be creative. But it's not like the most important thing. The thing that really gets your emails opened is not the subject line. And it's not the little preview text either that sits under the subject line. It's actually just your name and the psychological, emotional impact and reputation that your name has in the mind of the sender. So, for example, right, if Derek emails me or if Kennedy emails me, I'm going to open that email regardless of what the subject line is, even if it's got no subject line in it, because I want to know what you've got to say. If your mum emails you or your nan emails you or your best friend emails you, you're going to open it because you want to know what it says. So they don't have to put clever or tricky subject lines to get you to open it. You're just going to open it. And so what you really want to do is to pay attention to how you can build that reputation with your crowd so that actually, regardless of what the subject line says, they're going to open it. They want to find out what's happening now with Derek. And so when that happens, your open rates, not that they're correct, but like there's still, a percentage of people opening your emails. You're always going to get more people opening your emails because they care about what you've got to say and what's happening next and what's the story and whatever in today's email. And so that's the first thing. And then what happens is the subject line, then that's just the icing on the cake. That's just how you differentiate this email from tomorrow's email from the day after's email. And it can help to impact sales. It can help to make sure that it sort of pre-sells what you're about to go on and say inside of the email before you then drive them over to the thing. So the first thing that we're going to do with subject lines is to stop thinking about them as a thing that gets emails opened and think about them as a thing that warms up. It's like the warm-up man before a comedian that like gets people ready for what is about to happen. And that's a much more important way of thinking about it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So, I mean, let's think about them as a thing we need to say. We need to use them in order to say today's email's about something you care about. That's what it's about. Like, they know your name. They know that's going to be valuable every time. So how do you come up with these subject lines? The first thing is all of these formulas. Like, you need to always say these words or this here's some good formulas. They're fun shortcuts, but actually the best way to come up with a bottomless, refillable source of subject lines. And it's basically tied into things to stop doing as well, I guess. And that is, write your email first. Most email platforms, the marketing platforms, ask you to write the subject line first because that's how they're received. Like, you see the name, then the subject line. But actually, writing the subject line first is a terrible idea because you haven't written the email yet, which means you end up slowing down writing the email, trying to make sure it fits the subject line. Instead, just put a fake subject line in. Obviously, don't put anything rude in case you accidentally hit send without updating it. Don't be like, oi, or anything rude. But, I mean, oi might be quite good, actually. But you're going to just put something placeholder in. I tend to, like, just put the person's first name, the little bit of code you put in to merge someone's name in. Just put that in. And then skip forward, write the email. And then look at the themes of the email. Not the elements of the email which are about your product, but about the story you're telling, or the lesson you're sharing, or the thing that's going on in the email. So if your main part of your email might be about you are coming home from work, maybe the subject line, you might go, oh, maybe it could be the thing that happened on the way home from work. So, but what you want to do is use the topic and the subject matter of the email to inform your subject line. And that means you don't have to be creative when you still have got a blank screen of what the heck am I actually going to talk about. So use the content to inform your subject line. Do it that way around, and you'll find it so much easier.
Just so we can give everyone the answer that they do really like, though, as far as like just like here's 5 subject lines. Can we get a couple from you guys that are some of your favorites, or even if they're like formats of like X ways to do blank, like any kind of templates like that? What would be your favorites?
So
Let me literally dig out some of the.
Yeah. Let's get some real ones. So I'll tell you one of the ones.
Go for it, Rob.
Ones that I use. I use one for when I'm doing like testimonials, rather than going, "Hey, this is why people think I'm great," because no one wants to read that. It's not compelling. Whereas if I write brutal reviews, people definitely want to read that. So that's one.
I mean, so here's some subject lines that you absolutely can't steal, right? And the reason you can't steal them is because they just won't work unless they happen to fit the story that you're telling. So here's a few random ones that we sent lately. So one of mine was sending nudes to my dad, because we're slightly edgy, so we're happy to have slightly edgy subject lines. So sending nudes to my dad was one of the recent ones.
and that's what it was about.
It was basically about the fact that I'd accidentally
Like, yep, I did it.
It was basically I accidentally hit send on an email, and I instantly wanted to try and like delete it as quickly as possible. You know, like if you accidentally sent nudes to your dad, and you'd be like, quick, delete, trying to get rid of them as quickly as possible. So that was what that was about.
Nice.
And it goes on. So that's that. We've done the WTF syndrome. Was another one. Again, doesn't make any sense unless you've got a framework that's to do with that. One. So if you can like come up with uniquenesses, and a lot of ours revolve around curiosity. They're very
so like that WTF syndrome one was then you had an acronym for WTNF for teaching some email marketing.
Yeah, and they're very rarely they're very rarely clearly benefit driven. We found that the lowest results from the ones that are like 3 ways to get X. People sort of think they know what that is already without looking. So we tend to like take the story we tell in our email. Almost 100% of our emails have stories in them, and then we base the subject line on that.